Okay, so we are currently located on the land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among the Mississauga people and is the traditional and territories of the Mississauga of Chuog Island First Nation. We honor, recognize, respect this nation and the Indigenous people as traditional stewards of the land and the waters on which we meet today. Next slide, please. So we would like to thank Tracy Nash, she's here today, and Sabrina Young. So we had approached them last year, and this has been amazing that finally accumulated after many, many emails and messages. So thank you very much for your support and for Pickering Library for hosting this today. Next slide, please. So who are we? So we're the Canadian Council of Muslim Women. We are a charitable organization. We just became a registered charity last year, and we're 40 years in Canada. And so I would just like to take this time to introduce Firdaus Ali. She is the National D.A.R.E Project Manager. Firdaus, could you please say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Kubra. So just to introduce myself, I'm the manager for the Digital Anti-Racism Education 2 project, which is funded by the Government of Canada. And this project has been amazing. Being part of CCMW has been amazing. We are a group of really diverse, empowered Muslim women, girls, and non-binary people. So we are inclusive. And today's workshop is, I think, the many, we've done at least 40 to 50 right from summer of last year to now. And Kubra and her team, so we have a chapter in Durham among the 16 chapters that we have across Canada. So Kubra has led many of our workshops across Durham that are very well attended. We are so happy that our political leaders, our dignitaries are involved and engaged in this important conversation around Islamophobia and online hate. And just to give you a little rationale is that, we saw after the 2017 Quebec mosque massacre, a huge surge in Islamophobia. And that was kind of a wake-up call for our organization to say, as women, we must do something about it. And we are seeing the Islamophobia steadily on a rise at an alarming rate. So, you've seen it in Edmonton and Calgary against our Black Muslim women wearing the hijab. You've seen it in the Afzal family in London. So this is an important conversation. And I thank Tracy for coming together with our team to coordinate this. We've had 60 plus, we were counting, but we had 60 plus emails, I think, all through to make today's workshop happen. And I'm amazed that we had 60 plus participants register. So a big thank you to our Mayor of Pickering, David Ryan, for being here, supporting us in our work today, and to Councillor Shaheen Butt. I think your presence makes all the difference, because when you are listening, when you are engaged in this conversation, your constituent members are also listening and hopefully will engage with us. So thank you, Kubra, for leading this session, and I pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much for those. Next slide, please. Okay, actually, can we just change the order a bit? Sorry, can we just go to, all right, no, actually, no, sorry. We're gonna stay with this order. Okay, so my name is Kubra and I am the president of Durham region. Our chapter was established in 2019 and we have about 60 members currently. The focus of our chapter is to empower women with knowledge, give back to the community, and to build a strong foundation for the youth. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and I would like to introduce, we're very honored to have Mayor Dave Ryan from the city of Pickering. So if you can say a few words, and I would also like to say that Mayor Ryan has also supported a lot of our other activities. He has, when we had, what's it called, Islamic History Month in Pickering, even though we had a pandemic, he took the time to send me a very nice recording, and I really appreciate all the efforts you have made, Mayor Ryan. So if you could say a few words, we would appreciate it.
Well, Cooper, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. And to acknowledge the fact that collectively we recognize there's a problem. There is a challenge. I would just like to start by recognizing Councillor Shaheen Butt. You already have, but Councillor Butt is tireless in his efforts on behalf of the whole community, particularly within the Islamic community and at the mosque. And he has managed to involve council as a whole and the broader community. And I think that's the basis for going forward. We all understand, and Cooper, you mentioned in your mission statement a word that jumped out at me, and that's knowledge, because we know that hate is based in ignorance. And the only way you can combat ignorance is with knowledge. And I want to commend the community as a whole for the great efforts that you're making in that regard. And again, I can point to the efforts of Councillor Butt and our local mosque as they reach out into the broader community. And the thing that always stands out for me, and I talked about this with so many people right across our community, every opportunity that I get, the fact that you hold a Christmas event in the mosque. What can say more about fellowship, about everyone being human, about us all being one in so many ways than a gesture like that? So on behalf of council and myself, very pleased to be here with you this evening. I'm not going to be able to stay for the whole evening, but I will stay for a while. And I just want to commend all of you for the great work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan. And I would just like Shaheen Butt to give a few words. Shaheen Butt was appointed in 2016, and I've worked with him with senior groups, youth. I know he's done work, with the Rouge Valley Hospital. He supports local food banks, Syrian families, and a very strong supporter of the mosque. So I'm very honored to have Shaheen Butt here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kubra, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your kind words as well. Kubra, I want to welcome you and your team, and first of all, I want to thank the library for hosting this event and bring part of this important topic. The CCMW, which stands for Canadian Council of Women. I know this organization is very active in advocating for women's rights, especially for Muslim women. Kubra, under your leadership, we want to thank you for bringing this topic forward. It is an important topic, as the mayor alluded to this. And I want to focus in Pickering. In Pickering, we have 4 masjids. The community are law-abiding citizens, never a time of any violence or criminal activities. In fact, all the masjids are involved with local community work. There are the contributors to our local hospitals in here. They are contributors to the food bank, especially during the month of Ramadan. And I know many communities come forward, and anytime I'm in direct contact with the food bank with St. Paul's on the Hill. As a matter of fact, we have truckloads of food going during the month of Ramadan to our food banks to help our communities in Pickering. During the Islamophobia, what we have done is we've opened our doors in Pickering Islamic centers and other Islamic centers in order for someone who has any questions. They want to talk about religion in terms of what we do, our operating in terms to if they want to come and see the mosque or have any questions. Basically, Islam teachings, we are the followers of Abraham. We're the followers of Moses. We are the followers of Jesus and Muhammad. So all these faiths come together, and that's what the masjid is doing an excellent job in having sessions with the schools in our local ridings. They come forward and ask questions, which is great. So Kubra, I'm looking forward to your presentations. I want to see what you have up in here, and I'll be glad to comment or share any, thing that you have for us here. I also want to introduce Jacqueline Antonio, who is our senior advisor in City of Pickering, who looks after equity and diversity and inclusions. Jacqueline, are you on?
Yes, Councillor, but I'm here.
Jacqueline, if you would want to share a couple of words, I'll be glad.
Sure. I just want to say thank you to all for creating this incredible event. I won't take too much time because I know we have a lot to learn. But I am the new senior advisor for equity, diversity, and inclusion at the City of Pickering. Work very closely with the with the Pickering Public Library, and come to the city with a background in understanding hate crimes, and was particularly mentored by Dr. Barbara Perry, who folks may know is kind of Canada's expert scholar on hate crimes. So this work is important. I think it's important. I think we recognize that it's a problem, but we don't fully understand the extent and the scope and the nature And I think events like this are incredibly important for helping illuminate that and helping mobilize our community. Looking forward to working with you more closely and connecting offline. And thank you again for this event.
Oh, Jacqueline, it's a pleasure to meet you virtually, and thank you very much for your work. I think we're realizing that we need people like yourself, right? And so I hope we can support you in your endeavors as well. And next slide, please. Okay, and today's workshop. So my name is Kubra, and I am the president of the D.A.R.E chapter of CCMW. My family came from India when I was 2 years old. We moved to Cambridge, Ontario at the time, a very small population. My family was one of two brown people who lived in that community. And I was bullied and beaten up many, many times. And, you know, our family was told to go back home. They threw eggs at our house. My mom, you know, had the long, you know, the typical Indian woman with the long brown hair. And, you know, people would mock her as she's walking down the street. And so I used to feel ashamed to wear my cultural clothes. I would say, why do we have to wear this? The moment I get outside the door, people start making comments about me. And so anyways, that culminated in self-esteem issues. I learned to become very ashamed of my culture and of my religion. So today I am so thankful that I have this opportunity, like a 6-year-old who was bullied, and now I'm sitting here and I can share these experiences with you. So I'm very, very thankful to CCMW for allowing us to educate people and to tell people, you know, even though it's negative, there are things we can do to change things. So, and I would like to introduce Ruby. She's going to be talking about her experiences. Ruby, could you please say a few words?
Sure. Hi, my name is Rubina, actually, but people call me Ruby. I just wanted to talk a few things about my experience in Pickering. I moved here to Canada from Pakistan 30 years ago, and I came as an adult, so I have an accent which I can't get rid of. I try to blend in. I went to ESL classes to brush up my language skills and did some business courses to land a job in a bank, where I worked for almost 15 years. I'm a proud Pickering resident for past 20 years. Life was good until I started wearing hijab. If you ask me why, the answer will be it was one of the ways to be close to Almighty God. I tried wearing hijab first time in the year 2000 on my own decision. My husband had nothing to do with it. But then 9/11 happened and I was so scared to go out, not to mention go out in a hijab because of all the backlash. Second time I tried in 2014. This time nothing was going to stop me as I was committed to dress modestly, which means I never had a bad hair day. As my appearance changed, so do people's behavior towards me. I was no longer looked at as a normal Canadian, but the quote unquote, the hijabi lady. I would get the looks and the treatment of second-class citizen. Hijab is part of my identity as a Muslim woman, and I wear it with pride. You look at me and see a Muslim woman. Hijabi women are portrayed as extremists, ISIS sympathizer, or extremely oppressed women, and I'm none of those. In reality, I'm a cool mom, wife, sister. Ask any of those who know me. In a world where women are often sexualized, there is something extremely powerful about knowing people who won't judge me based on what I'm wearing, but actually they do. Every time I go out to shop, work, or just for a walk, we Muslims sometimes don't feel safe even when we are in our place of worship, peacefully praying. Look at the Quebec mosque tragedy, or going for a walk with the family like London family tragedy. Today, I'm telling you my story to bring your attention to this problem. Please educate yourself and let's teach our kids to make this world a safe place where no one is judged by the color of their skin, the head coverings, or their religion. Let's all come together to erase Islamophobia or any kind of discrimination from Canada. God bless Canada. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ruby. That was very moving. Thanks for sharing your experiences. I just also like to mention I'm from Ajax. So I moved here 11 years ago, and I would like to introduce Natalia. Natalia, could you please say a few words, and you'll be speaking next after this.
Hi, everyone. I migrated from Guyana, South America 27 years ago. Being a Muslim, female Muslim of East Indian descent, I've experienced racism on multiple levels based on my sex, height, color of my skin, and faith throughout my life. I have memories of being bullied in high school for being too tall, or in Canada, feeling uncomfortable discussing my faith with friends and others outside the community. I am proud today to be part of this initiative to help educate our community on anti-racism and cyberbullying while working to eradicating hate of all forms. And next slide, please. So before we start this session, this initiative is part of the Hate to Heal campaign that CCMW launched, an online counter speech campaign responding to online hate. To get more information, please visit the www.daretobeaware.ca website and learn more about Canadian Muslims and how they're countering racism, hate, and Islamophobia. Next slide, please. The D.A.R.E project builds on previously developed Countering Cyber Hate 101 workshop. This phase of the project consisted of virtually training individuals as trainers across Canada to deliver community workshops completed, with 427 participants attending a 2-day workshop and 214 individuals receiving the D.A.R.E certificate. Anti-Islamophobia 101 and Countering Cyber Hate 101 community workshops are aiming to train over 700 participants in sectors such as law enforcement, education, settlement, healthcare, and other community organizations. The workshops are to be completed by March 2022 and will be held virtually. D.A.R.E virtual launch took place on September 26, 2021, which consisted of a series of online videos where individuals shared their stories and experiences of hate, racism, and Islamophobia, and the impacts that it have on racialized Muslim women and girls. Next slide, please. Before we begin this program, I just wanted to go over some ground rules. Please, let's acknowledge multiple viewpoints and opinions. Let's own our intentions and impact. Reflect critically and respect everyone's viewpoint. Let's recognize our own privileges and honor the different experiences we bring to this space. Next slide, please. Today's agenda is split into 5 parts. Now, it's a lot of material and a lot of ground that we have to cover today. We will be learning and sharing themes on Islamophobia, gendered Islamophobia, intersectional identities, confronting Islamophobia. Then we'll look at offline and online hate and individual and collective counter speech. I'd like to pass it over to Kubra to start us off with what is Islamophobia.
Thank you, Natalia, and thank you, Ruby. So what is Islamophobia? Next slide, please. So one of the most common myths is that that all Muslims are Arabs, or that most Arabs are Muslims. So if you look at this slide, it illustrates it so well. So the Asian Pacific, it's 61%. This is where my family's from. The Middle East is only 20%, and Africa is 15%, Europe is 2.4%, and America is only 0.3%. So this is a very interesting graph, and sometimes even I did not know these numbers. Next slide, please. So we're going to be playing a video, and what I want you to do is please think about how you feel after listening to this call, and we're going to talk about this afterwards. We're going to, so if you have anything you want talked about, discrimination or whatever you say about this phone call. So if you can please play the phone.
Yes, good afternoon. Just calling to express our grave concern with allowing these Syrian Islamic Muslims into Canada. I believe that there is good people mixed in with the bad, but you always have to err on the side of caution. And we do not want not one Syrian refugee into Canada. And that whole Islam is a flawed religion, a dangerous religion. It is the only religion where terrorists come from. And I do not want that to be my future Canada. They can stay in their own country and live the way they want, wear their headdresses, wear their hijabs, and they can change laws in their own country. Our laws are based on Christian, Judeo-Christian values and morals and standards. And our family immigrated in the early 1900s. When they came here, they had to pick rock, dig roots, clear land. And you know, these here immigrants that come now, they come and they want a free car, a free house, handouts. These Syrians, they're coming here with nothing except their hands out, their mouths open, and just to be a drain on our society. This is taxpayer money, and I hope this dumb Trudeau listens to the Canadian people when we say no to refugees, these Syrians. There's lots of other refugees from a lot of parts of the world where there is no Muslims and no Islamic people that they can bring in and help from the Ukraine, from other parts of impoverished countries that would want to come here and adapt, not change our laws. You know that hijab and headdresses? That's men made that up in that country. It's a sign of oppression. And when I see that as a white person, I see the woman is oppressed, is what I see. No to Syrian refugees. And for that fact, Muslims and Islamic people as well. We have enough of them. I'm starting to be that we feel like we're in their country. We're an immigrant, here. There's so many of them everywhere you go. Stay in your own country. Keep your beliefs. Keep your religion.
End of message. To delete this message.
Okay, I should have mentioned that this was this phone call received in 2015 at the height of the Syrian refugee issue. And, there was some controversy over the niqab. When people cover their faces, not just the head covering, but just you see the eyes at a citizenship ceremony. So I would just like to say, in terms of when I was in first year university, I was boarding with an older woman, and just before my exam started, she kicked me out. And what she told me is, my family has been here since Confederation. We came from Britain, and you guys are immigrants, and you come, you take our jobs, you don't give to us. But like I told you earlier, my father came, and then within 2 days he had a job. This is not the reality of my family. All of us, and I'm sure you can relate to this. We have contributed, and it actually made me very angry to hear this call. It brought back those memories of me as a student, a university student. If anyone wants to make a comment, or if you want to do it, make comments below. We'll be happy to hear it, because we try to make this a bit more interactive. So is there anything? I feel like it was SCON. I felt like it was WS, and yeah, the speech, the contact is very much together. That's SCON. And then somebody said they were nervous. Is there anyone else who would like to share anything that
I
you
would like
feel?
to share, Kubra.
Yes, go ahead.
When I travel a lot with my husband, we go on vacation, and most of the time when I'm traveling, I get picked on to get extra search. Usually they want me to give my head a massage by tapping my hair around that I'm not getting anything, which is very silly. But yes, that happens to me a lot.
Okay, actually, that's also my husband. When we travel, we have to actually leave early because for some reason we're always delayed. The best was when we went to Walt Disney World. You know, they wouldn't let us in. And I'm going, what's going on here? We're all citizens of Canada. But anyways, you know, I think that's another issue too. S-Con, would you like to say something?
Yes, hi. Assalamu alaikum, Kubra. This is Saliha. You and I have talked earlier before
Yes.
from other spaces.
Yes.
So I just wanted to kind of confirm this. I'm sorry, I fat fingers as I was typing, it would just hit send. And that's why the sentences were not really joined. But I was just kind of chuckling away at the message. And I honestly, until you said that it was recorded in 2015, I would have thought it was done like today in the morning. It wouldn't have really been any different from there. So it's, you know, kudos to you all for staying sane and for trying to do something which is to bring light to this kind of underbelly that unfortunately is no longer an underbelly as we would see it. It's, you know, I think the time when we used to make the statement about coming out of the woodwork or something like that, it's long gone. It's no longer an issue of something that is hidden or subliminal or subtle or anything like that. That racism, that Canadian racism is pretty much in your face and it's ready to punch you out.
Well, thank you very much and nice of you to join us. Sabra, would you like to say something?
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I think I just want to add that since 2015, I think we've made a lot of strides. So I can see why this 2015 call at the time probably sounded appropriate. But I basically want to give the caller kudos for some of the words that she actually educated herself on, rather than making up her own names. And I don't know, I actually thought she was quite educated about Islam. So, you know, I think that's a bonus point for us.
So Kubra, I'd just like to add that the same caller had called CCMW, and the call was picked up by our executive director, Nuzhat Jaffrey. And the caller called as soon as I had done an interview on, I think it was CBC or CTV. I was talking about the teacher who was wearing a hijab and was taken off the school in Quebec due to Bill 21. I kind of spoke against this injustice. And within a few minutes, this caller called. It was the same lady, the same rant. She had the same, excuses that you heard in this call. So right from 2015 to 2022, I guess her belief and her views have not changed. We tried our best to educate her, without creating a conflict, but it absolutely did not work. So just to let you know that the caller is having the same views even today.
Well, thank you for those, and thank you everyone for sharing. So if we can just move forward, we have another slide, please. So how are Muslims, Shaheen Butt, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, thanks, Kubra. I think, again, I think I like people who have negative things to say about Islam. And I think we are educated enough and we've been living here for long enough to as well to compromise, to tell them what Islam is all about. I think, I get asked questions because my wife wears a hijab as well, and she's up and running around all over the place. And I think for this, people who lack the knowledge in terms of not knowing what Islam is and not linking our religion, Islam, with Christianity or Judaism and Abraham followers. And I think, for those people who probably say bad things about Islam because they lack the knowledge about Christianity. They lack the knowledge that we do believe in Jesus. They lack the knowledge that we do believe in Moses. They lack the knowledge that we do believe in Abraham. It isn't any different. So I'm always up on there for discussions, and I run into many people in my area and Pickering here people who have questions, and I'm always willing to share my thoughts. And I always address that if I'm not a good Christian, I'm not a good Muslim. If I'm not a good, a follower of Moses, I'm not a Muslim. So, there's a different ways in terms to dealing with, difficult people who do not understand Islam, as I said, but, there are people like you and your team and myself in terms to, I know many Muslims who are reasonable in order to talk and discuss and have these people come forward. In my introduction, I mentioned that the masjid now, we have 4 masjids in Pickering. And I know each one of them are open for any dialogue, any discussions, any misconceptions about Islam in terms of how we pray, the Quran, and if they need a copy of Quran. And I know that's the mosque has opened their doors. And I know every imam in the masjids, they actually offer Qurans and they offer lessons and free lessons just to educate, just to bring the gap, close the gap in terms to, people who do not understand about Islam. So, I'll wait to your presentation, and if there's more thing that I need to add on, I will add on. Great, thanks, Kubra. That's all I have to say.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Butt. And so I just see there's a few messages. Anjali, she says, I feel all schools should offer religion in school. Excellent point. And then we have Julie. She's saying that she's a white teacher who tries to prevent this. So thank you, Julie, for taking the time to educate your students. And then Esther, and actually, Esther, thank you for joining us. I think you're with the Black Women of W. I think it's Women of Black Region. I'm sorry if I can't remember the right the acronym.
WMRCC of
Okay, could you? What does that mean? I'm so sorry.
Women's Multicultural Resource and Counseling Center of Durham. Sorry, Kubra, I mentioned to you we have event tonight as well.
And
so
I
want to show my support. So excuse me to go to that event.
Okay, I actually put, you're not going to hear it till later, but we are going to talk about it. I did not know this, that Durham has one of the largest Black population in Canada. So we are actually going to show you a video. I'll send it to you later. It's very nice. They're talking about Black Muslims in Edmonton, but it really applies because there's so many, you're a woman, you're Black, and you're Muslim. Look at all those adjectives, but can you imagine the problems that they face? So thank you very much, Esther. Esther and I, we worked together. We helped promote a Durham region event. So thank you for taking the time to come today. I appreciate that.
Cobra, for the work you are doing. Thanks a lot. We have to do this work. It's needed in the community. And Honorable His Worship Mayor Ryan,
yes,
nice to see you. Good to see everyone. Thank you.
Oh,
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther, and thank you for taking the time. And Mayor Ryan, would you like to say something?
Well, thank you. And first of all, I'm going to have to leave in a moment, but I just wanted to respond to this as well. And Ms. Hendren has said it so well. I'm embarrassed to be a Canadian. The people like the woman that we've just all heard and experienced, again, it's based in ignorance. They don't understand the world and they don't understand themselves. They have a lack of knowledge of their own history. I mean, her comment about terrorism coming solely from Islam, she obviously doesn't know the first thing about the Crusades. She doesn't know about the atrocities that have been committed in the name of other religions, particularly specifically within the Christian religion. She's ignored what the Christian religions have done with our indigenous peoples, because there's parallel messages here. There's parallel hurt, there's parallel hate. And I think someone like that, we're never going to win over because they refuse to listen. They don't want to know. But I join with you and Councillor Butt, all of you on this call. I will continue to do everything that I can to support your efforts and to help to educate the people that I come in contact with. with the realities and help to eliminate the stain on our culture, on our society. So thank you all very much for letting me be here with you just for the little time I've been able to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan, for taking the time to come talk to us. Having your support, right at the top makes such a difference in our communities. So thanks to Councillor Shaheen Butt and yourself, and for council, you've all been very you're tolerant, and the library, you're letting us do this. So I would just like to continue on with our presentation. So thank you for coming, Mayor Ryan. All right, so next slide, please. So how are Muslims portrayed? Muslims are seen as manipulative or insincere, using their faith mainly for political and strategic purposes. So if you look at this one, the myth is it's monolithic. The reality, as we just talked about it, is that there's Arab Muslims, there's non-Arabs, there's South Asian, just like myself, there's all types. And we're that Muslims, that they're separate, they're all by themselves. That's not the reality. We are integrated and interdependent. We're considered inferior, but if many people, if you understand the history of civilization, we created the pen, algebra, math, all comes from Islamic people who did all these advancements in technology. They believe, or the myth is that women are oppressed, but actually reality, women have their own agenda and choice. Muslims are seen as violent, but we work for bettering of all communities and society. I've also heard this one, that we're manipulative and we can't be trusted, but that's not actually what we believe in. Like Councillor Shaheen Butt was saying, we actually follow the 10 Commandments, being honest, truthful, helping each other, loving our neighbors. These are all things that we believe in as Muslims. And the other thing is we can't take criticism. But like you said, we're here, we're giving you our presentation, we're allowing you to say things. So I think this is just a myth, right? The reality is we do care. Next slide, please. Okay, so Islamophobia, it's perpetuated by the media. So terror attacks carried out by Muslims received an average of 357% more press coverage than those committed by non-Muslims. So this is actually crazy. It's a huge number. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to be playing a little video. If you can just play it, Iman.
Our news media exists to help us get a sense of our communities and the world at large. It does this by looking at the infinite number of things that are happening around the globe and chooses what to report, how to report, and how much to report. This means that all media, even when it's just straight reporting of facts, is political. But Islamophobia informs our mainstream media, meaning that the picture it's creating is distorted. This image is one that reinforces unfair biases about Islam and Muslims. An academic study on Canadian mainstream media confirms that violent acts committed by Muslims get far more news coverage than violent acts by white supremacists and right-wing extremists, even though the latter have been responsible for more deaths. So even though Muslim political violence has taken only 2 lives in Canada since 1960, the media is giving us a different story, leaving us in Canada always worried about the next act of so-called jihadi terrorism. And it's not just in the amount of coverage, but the type of coverage. Take these 2 front pages of the Globe and Mail. On the left, taken the day after the Boston Marathon bombing, and on the right, the day after the Quebec mosque shooting. The Quebec mosque shooting happened in Canada and was more fatal than the Boston Marathon bombing. But the headlines would have you believe another story. And so our mainstream media doesn't just deliver us the facts, it also strongly influences how we feel about the facts. In this case, by suggesting that Muslim lives aren't as important as non-Muslim ones. Now, take this terrorism timeline put together by Global News after the Quebec mosque shooting. The only other incidents mentioned on there are ones by Muslims, including one that wasn't even carried out. The timeline doesn't include some more fatal acts of violence, like the murder of 3 RCMP officers by right-winger Justin Bork, or the murder of 14 women at L'École Polytechnique by Marc Lepine. So when people say that all terrorists are Muslim, it's because, well, we only call something terrorism if it was committed by Muslims. We rightly expect the mainstream media to be a truth teller, but Islamophobia and other biases mean that this isn't the case. Islamophobia in media leads us to overestimate the threat of Muslim violence and underestimate the threats against Muslims. This contributes to more Islamophobia. It's a vicious cycle. We need to rely on more honest sources of analysis and knowledge. At the same time, we also have to hold our mainstream media to account for perpetuating unfounded stereotypes about Muslims and Islam.
Thank you, Imam. Can we just go to the next slide, please? Okay, so laws that target Muslims in Canada. So the first one is Bill 21. So this bill was introduced, Bill 21 came in effect in Quebec, and it bans public sector employees such as teachers, police officers, judges and others from wearing and displaying religious symbols such as hijabs, niqabs, and others like turbans in the workplace. So this is actually a very, very scary one. So a child or someone who spent their whole life becoming a teacher is not able to teach in Quebec. So this is a very scary law. The next one is the Anti-Terrorism Act. So this law came forward in 2015 by Harper, Prime Minister Harper, and this allows the federal government to have more access to private data. So they can use this, actually this is basically an excuse to breach human rights. And we actually think this is actually anti-constitutional and that allows Muslims to become more, targeted by racial profiling. Next slide, please. So in that video, they talked a bit about it. As a result of racial profiling in mainstream, we've seen a huge surge in Islamophobia. So on January 29th, 6 Muslim men were shot dead at a mosque. So these men were praying at a mosque. They never came home, right? They just died. I actually saw a video. It was horrible that the families, these men used to go prayer regularly. They never showed up home. They didn't even know for 24 hours where they were. So this is a horrible, horrible story. And then, so then we also had, what's it called? And it was actually considered also the worst mass murder in Canada's history. And the gentleman on the left is Muhammad Asim Safis, and he was stabbed to death. He was a volunteer at the International Muslim Organization in a mosque in 2020. And then last year was the horrible, horrible death of one family. They're in London, Ontario. They just went out for a walk and, they didn't even have ID on them. And somebody looked at the fact that they're wearing hijab, ran them over. The 9-year-old was hospitalized. And it seems they had to identify the family because none of them had ID. And I'm telling you, that one is the most scary story for me because I go for a walk all the time, even though I don't wear hijab. But can you imagine, you're just out for a walk and you never show up again. So this is such a horrific story. So I would like Natalia to please present our next part of our program. Natalia?
Thanks, Kubra. Just to recap a little bit of what was discussed, let's please, it's a lot of information. It may be emotional for some. Please be kind and patient. And we understand that this is a lot of information and it could be, I guess for some individuals may feel it more than others here. So let's be kind to each other. The next part is going into gendered Islamophobia. Next slide, please. Next slide.
I believe that the slide
Yeah.
sharing is not working right now.
Iman, are we okay to share the slide or?
There we go.
Can you all see the presentation?
Yes, I could see the presentation. So you just need to go to the gendered Islamophobia section.
Yep.
So in the meantime, before I start off with gendered Islamophobia and what is gendered Islamophobia, does anybody want to give us an idea if they know what, when I say gendered Islamophobia, what that means? Anisha? You can speak.
It could mean that it's Islamophobia focused on one particular gender type. So for example, Islamophobia against women.
Yeah, perfect. You got it.
Thank you.
So can we go to the next slide, please? So gendered Islamophobia consists of ways the state utilizes gendered forms of violence to oppress, monitor, and punish, mime, or control Muslim bodies. Let's take a look at this video and see how gendered Islamophobia is played out.
Patriarchy is a global force, and there is no society with full gender equality. But the dominant representation of Muslim women is that they are especially oppressed by their religion and the men in their communities. This misrepresentation or stereotype is used to justify forms of violence that claim to save Muslim women, but harm them instead. This contradiction is known as gendered Islamophobia. For example, the most frequent victims of Islamophobic hate crimes in Canada are Muslim women. This is compounded for Black Muslim women who also experience anti-Black racism. And yet the media focuses almost exclusively on the persecution of Muslim women by their own communities. So-called honor crimes, which are extremely rare in North America, are heavily reported on. Incidents in which Muslim women have been attacked or killed with racist intent, however, receive much less attention. Academic research shows how North American media perpetuates the stereotype of the oppressed Muslim woman, while downplaying Muslim women's agency as well as violence against non-Muslim women. For instance, the Globe and Mail devoted more coverage to the tragic Shafia murder case alone than to the widespread problem of fatal violence against Canadian women as a whole. These stereotypes also underlie laws like Canada's Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Cultural Practices Act. This law adds extra punishments for certain so-called cultural practices stereotypically associated with Muslims, like so-called honor killings, forced marriage, and polygamy, even though these are already illegal in Canada. As legal experts know, this law actually makes women less safe. If they report their abuse, their family members might be criminalized or deported, and so they are more likely to stay silent. Niqab and hijab bans similarly claim to protect Muslim women, but such bans violate Muslim women's freedom to choose what they wear. They also lead to further stigmatization and marginalization of Muslim women by preventing their full economic and social participation. Our foreign policy is also shaped by gendered Islamophobia, like when politicians justified the war in Afghanistan as a mission to save Muslim women. Of course, women aren't actually liberated by the destruction of their societies. Resisting gendered Islamophobia means recognizing that Muslim women are not passive victims waiting to be saved, but that, like women everywhere, Muslim women also resist the violence and oppression they experience. It means recognizing that Islam is, for many women, a resource for liberation. Resisting gendered Islamophobia means always going back to a fundamental feminist principle. Listen to what Muslim women themselves are saying about the clothes they wear, about the violence they experience, and about the forms of solidarity they need.
If we can go to the next slide, please. So here, that was a brief synopsis of what gendered Islamophobia is. There are different types of gendered Islamophobia. So some of the types of gendered Islamophobia are microaggressions, stereotyping, exclusion, verbal abuse and threats, online harassment, sexual assault and harassment, and physical violence. The one we're going to look at today is microaggressions. Next slide, please. So microaggressions are the slights and ignites that are deeply rooted in prejudices and biases. They can be verbal or nonverbal that portray hostility or bias towards a group of individuals. Microaggressions directed at Muslim women, girls, trans, and non-binary individuals are often rooted in harmful stereotypes about Muslims. Next slide, please. The impact of Islamophobia on women. Reports of online hate speech and extremism have surged in Canada. Women face multiple forms of discrimination, such as racial or cultural discrimination, homophobia and transphobia are at the increased risk of cyber violence. Women aged 18 to 24 are most likely to experience severe forms of online abuse, including stalking, sexual harassment, and physical threats. Islamophobia is one form of discrimination that contributes to Muslim women experiences of vulnerability in public and online. Let's take a look at the video.
Natalia, can we play the video a little later?
Sure, we can. So let's progress on to the group discussion. Have you or anyone you know experienced gendered Islamophobia? And I would even take out the Islamophobia. And if you've experienced any form of racism within, whether it be because of your sex or your religious beliefs or the color of your skin, because again, Islamophobia is just one level of racism.
Actually, I was just going to say, we did a meeting for the city of Oshawa. We did 2 sessions for them, and it was so interesting. So one of the ladies, what she said was, she was at a grocery store, and there was all these people lining up, but nobody wanted to go to the girl who was wearing hijab, you know, the hair covering. So she was just standing there. And so anyways, this woman went over, spoke to her, and put her groceries through. But you know, so there she was being discriminated. Obviously, she's wearing hijab. People weren't comfortable. Oshawa obviously does not have, or now has a growing Muslim population, but you know, it must have been very difficult for that girl. Maybe she would have lost her job if this woman hadn't gone there. So that, you know, she gave that story. I just thought that was so amazing to hear that story, that someone, you know, saw something going wrong and advocated. Okay, Natalia, I'll let you say the rest.
No, I see Anisha has her hands up. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I think that was up from before. I just forgot to put it down. Sorry.
No problem. So yes, what do you think that those impact around you, like for family and community? As Kubra indicated, this was an example of someone sharing their experience that they observed something and being engaged. Now, a lot of us look out, or you would look and be a bystander. So we have to think of what the impact is on someone of that is experiencing that and where the trends can go from there. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at Islamophobia and intersectionality. The concept of intersectionality have been defined as intersectional oppression that arises out of a combination of various oppressions, which together produce something unique and distinct from any one form of discrimination standing alone. Institutions don't often recognize intersectionality in addressing discrimination and various forms of Islamophobia. Islamophobia isn't one size fits all. It often intersects with other forms of discrimination, such as Black or Indigenous Muslims, or even LGBTQ Muslims. These individuals are more likely to suffer negative effects of information sharing agreements between police and national security agencies, since Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQ individuals are disproportionately targeted by police information gathering practicing like carding. Next slide. Intersectionality is a complex and cumulative way in which the effects of multi forms of discrimination is combined, overlap, or intersects, especially in experiences of marginalized individuals. Here's a quote from Kimberly Cronshaw on intersectionality. Intersectionality is a lens through which you can see where power comes and collides, where it interlocks and intersects. It's not simply that there's a race problem here, a gender problem here, and a class or LGBTQ problem there. Many times, that framework erases what happens to people who are subject to all of these things. Next slide. Intersectional identities, looking at Black and Muslim. Black Muslims have deep historic roots within Canadian Islamic history. The conversation of being Black and Muslim is an important one. It is important to note that the first Muslims to arrive in North America were Black Muslims. Islamic history has its roots in Africa, but due to the lack of focus on these historical facts, Black Muslims feel that their identity continued to be erased due to the lack of knowledge and inclusion without conversation surrounding Blackness and Muslimness. Next slide, please. Let's listen.
So Natalia, this is the video. Just want to share that it is part of our CCMW's Hate to Healing campaign. And this video is by Ghania Sadiq, who is from Edmonton. And she talks about how, the Black Muslim women are being attacked. It's almost being normalized over there, and how we can stand up to it. So it's part of our Hate to Healing campaign, which I'm going to play right now.
Thank you.
My name is Ghania, and I'm from Alberta, Canada. I'm currently a student, and I chose to make today's video because a change needs to happen. The rise in Islamophobic attacks and the specific targeting of Black Muslim women needs to stop. It is fair to classify the racism and Islamophobia in our communities as a recent increase. But it's also important to realize that the racism and Islamophobia has always been there. Specifically, there has been an increase in the boldness of the people perpetuating these acts of violence. There is this lack of fear of repercussion that is directly correlated to the lack of significant action taken by the Canadian government about these attacks against Muslims. Being a Black Muslim woman, I have faced my fair share of racism, sexism, and Islamophobia, and these acts of violence lead to a hyper-awareness of the stereotypes about my race, about my gender, and about my religion that are continuously normalized and perpetuated in society today. With this normalization, a hyper-invisibility also manifests in the sense that people know racism exists, people know Islamophobia is on the rise, people know Muslim women are being targeted, but there isn't a significant enough outcry about these atrocities. It is a hard realization when ignorance is no longer the issue, but rather a growing apathy towards these injustices. The reaction towards the repeat and recurrent attacks against Black Muslim women in Edmonton is anger and fear, truthfully. I am angry because no one deserves to be treated like this. No one deserves to be targeted and attacked for who they are. I am privileged enough to have never experienced any threats to my physical safety, but I think there is an increasing level of uncertainty every time I do go to the grocery store, I go to the park, I'm walking with my parents. It's essentially an increasing level of fear every time I'm conducting my life in a public space. And with that, there are changes to my lifestyle, but I think the biggest change is mentally that I do kind of tell myself today might be the day that someone does try you, someone does something physically or say something threatening towards you, and that has definitely changed my childhood notion that Canada is a safe and welcoming country. My advice to the government and law enforcement agencies to prevent future attacks against Muslims is to actively listen. If Muslims are telling you that they are not feeling safe and they are not being consulted, therein lies the major issue. The lack of consultation of Black Muslim women and failure to listen when they are told to be consulted is what manifests cursory solutions to a growing epidemic of anti-Black and anti-Muslim hatred that is systemically rooted in Canadian society. My message to sisters in Edmonton and Canada is that when people choose to associate negativity and hatred towards elements of our identity, we must see strength, we must see determination to enforce change, and we must see hope, inshallah, for a better future in those same elements of ourselves. We are Muslim women, and that is a very powerful title to hold.
Thank you for sharing that. And that applies to not only Black Muslims in Edmonton, but Black Muslims right here in Durham share the same experiences. Islamophobia and Muslims with disability. Muslims with disability often face dual challenges of being discriminated against for both Islamophobia and ableism. They are discriminated against for their experiences are unique too as Muslims. Next slide. Islamophobia and LGBTQI Muslims oftentimes people think that queer and trans Muslims don't exist and that all Muslims are homophobic or transphobic. This is not true. In addition, queer Muslims face both Islamophobia and homophobia at the same time. Next slide. Indigenous Muslims. Being an Indigenous Muslim means experiencing both anti-Indigenous racism and Islamophobia simultaneously. Canadians operate and live in an unceded Indigenous land. The First Nations never legally signed away their lands to the Crown or Canada. Indigenous individuals continue to experience systemic anti-Indigenous racism at the hand of systems and institutions in power and from ordinary citizens. Next slide. Here's a visual summary of how Islamophobia can be played out in our society. As you can see, there's exclusion, violence, prejudice, and discrimination are some of the examples on how Islamophobia exists in various places within our society. For examples of exclusion can be the form of politics and government, from employment or management. On the other hand, various forms of violence, such as physical assault, vandalizing of property, and verbal abuse can be a perfect example of racism, which is also a form of of Islamophobia. Now it's 10 after 7. We've already finished a little over an hour. Let's take a 5-minute bio break and come back at 15 minutes after 7. And then I'll pass it over to Kubra to go to the next part of offline and online hate within Canada. Thank you.
Maybe we need to mute somebody.
Let's make money out of it.
So I would like to thank Natalia. That was an excellent segment that you did. Thank you very much. And Iman, if we can have the next slide, please. And I also would like to say thank you for staying with us. I realize this is a lot of material, a lot of stuff that we are imparting with you. So thank you for your patience, your time this evening for allowing us to present. So my topic is online and online hate in Canada. Next slide, please. So police reported hate crime in 2017. So it was 47% higher than the previous year. This is the fourth year. They're saying it's an annual increase, and this is a result in the number of hate crimes against Muslim, Jewish, and Black population. As the little video that we showed earlier, Durham region actually has a very large Black population, one of the largest in Canada. So unfortunately, these three groups, Black, Jewish, Black populations, are often the target of these hate crimes. Next slide, please. So what is, cyber hate? So cyber crimes, what we're talking about is, online, when you're on social media, they target about 17% of Muslims. And of these, about 11% were of threats they're having. And what they're saying with the police is about 50% is solved by the police, right? So next slide, please. So the Ontario Human Rights Commission, they say that a hate crime is hate incidents that are also criminal offenses committed against a person or property and motivated in whole or in part by prejudice or bias on real and perceived race, national, ethnic origin, color, religion, gender, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, or any other factors. Next slide, please. I think that's the same slide. So the next one. Okay, so when we think about hate and hate crimes, it's natural for us to assume that treating others is a hateful way and it must be illegal in Canada. But this is not the case. It's not as easy as that. The criminal code does not clearly define hatred. They're in different levels of government and the media and the academia. They don't use one standard universal definition of hatred. Next slide, please. So we're all familiar with social media. So these two are the main ones. So Facebook and Twitter, but obviously there's other platforms that have this sort of stuff, but we just picked out two. So what Facebook says is we don't allow hate speech. And, so it could be, they don't want any attacks on people based on their race, ethnicity, and same thing with Twitter, right? That you could get banned from both of these, social media platforms if you do anything like that. So it's very important, and we also saw that Trump was famous for tweeting out all these comments and creating hatred and violence against people all over the world. And it seems there's also a music genre called hate rock, right? And these are music, this is some kind of music streaming site that, have this, you can find this on YouTube, internet. And anyways, these are all very common ways, for example, even WhatsApp, a lot of us use WhatsApp, that common expressions of hatred are spread. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we spot fake news? Okay, so what we need to do is make sure if you see anything with all caps, meaning uppercase letters, or something that's photoshopped, it's obviously a problem. If you see pop-ups or banner ads, that's another problem. If you see some kind of information, check the domain, check, like the HTTPS, look for that. Make sure that you're using reputable outlets. Make sure you don't use stuff that is, fake, right? Make sure that you check the date when this sort of material, social media, sometimes what they use is old material, right? And they regurgitate it, recycle it, and they put it out. And sometimes they photograph and purposely label things incorrectly. And the other thing, what we recommend for you all is don't share something if you have any doubts. And I just want to share one little story. I met an imam from Etobicoke, and what they had done is taken his picture and said he was an imam in Dallas. He's never been to Dallas, but he received hate, threats, death threats from all over the world. So what they did was just took his picture, created a fictional mosque in Dallas, a place he's never been to. And anyways, this is so important for us to understand and realize that we have control. Do not just keep on forwarding messages. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a toolkit for women. So what they say is it's to help women navigate the system. If you can go through this website, it'll help you. It'll talk about things like digital self-defense, and we need to pay attention a lot more to how our data, how they encrypt, meaning how we can protect ourselves. And so many of the things that they advocate is deleting. If you don't like something, you can block that person. You can mute them. You can unfollow, meaning don't follow people that are saying bad things. Change your privacy, meaning make sure that not everyone reads your material, and then report it. If you see some horrible content, you can report it through all these social media sites. Next slide, please. And I'm going to ask Natalia to take on another part of our presentation. Thank you, Natalia.
Thanks, Gubra. So this is the final part of our discussion this evening. We're looking at individual and collective counter-speech. Next slide. So earlier we discussed about the opportunity to work together to counter hate online. But how exactly do we do that? There are many ways we can approach it. The one we would like to invite you to join us is called counter speech. Next slide. Let's watch a video by Dr. Erin Saltzman on counter speech. The volume?
I don't think the sound was shared.
Yeah, the sound is
there, but the way that looks is obvious. I'm Dr. Erin Marie Saltman, and I'm a senior researcher at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue in London. Well, we've come to a period where actually online and offline engagement are definitely linked together, but the way that looks is obviously very different. So hate speech offline is very distinctive, whereas online hate speech becomes quite a big gray area. It's very hard to define, and also a lot more people can sometimes be incentivized to be more extreme online because they can have anonymous profiles. They feel like they're not having to say something in front of direct people. It feels more protected. So we do see more engagement in extremist rhetoric, sometimes online, that people would not necessarily say offline. Counter-speech is a term that's really only come about in the last few years. Just like counter-extremism as a sector, this is relatively new, especially for governments, but particularly for civil society. Counter-speech can also be called counter-narratives or even alternative narratives. Counter-speech doesn't necessarily mean that it's negative speech. What it means is any sort of pathway or route or project that is undermining extremist rhetoric. So that could be through a campaign, that could be offline through a protest or an initiative, it could be through a hashtag, and it's different types of ways of engaging and countering extremism online. Counter-speech, particularly now, is highly important because we're witnessing that the typical things that would work offline, such as censoring hate speech, editing out individuals, not allowing them to have public platform if they're hate preachers. People tend to find online platforms as a way of continuing this, and actually counter-speech is extremely effective when we get alternative voices engaging against extremism online, because the typical measures of trying to censor or filter extremist content simply aren't working. In essence, if you're using censorship, you're attacking a symptom instead of a cause. And also it's ineffective. We see the same video or same comment coming back over and over, and actually just countering that with credible voices, with civil society standing up against it, is much more powerful. So civil society has a crucial part to play in counter-extremism and in counter-speech online because they are the credible voice. A government voice or even the head of a tech sector is not actually what is credible. Peers are credible, former extremists, mothers, religious leaders all have a role to play and a very powerful voice. However, for a civil society individual, it can be quite intimidating to go and try to counter an extremist, which is not what I would ever ask anyone to do unless they really wanted to. I personally would not go on a KKK website and say, stop being racist. Actually, there's a lot of ways to engage in hashtags or be a part of larger movements that are really positive, that actually aren't directly attacking anything, but actually are just providing really positive alternatives that naturally undermine extremism. And everyone has a role to play in that.
As we've heard, what Dr. Saltzman explanation. Yeah, so when we talk about counter speech, what is counter speech? We've heard Dr. Saltzman's explanation of the term counter speech, which used interchangeably with counter narrative and alternative narrative. Let's consider another slightly different explanation of what counter speech is and how it works. The term counter speech refers to responses or content that is created to counter a range of extremism and hate speech online. If you think of counter speech as a spectrum of possible ways to counter hate speech online, a counter narrative is one tool within that spectrum that we can use to challenge the ideologies, narratives, worldviews of racist and hateful messages. The purpose of counter narrative, like the purpose of counter speech in general, is to discredit, deconstruct, and demystify. So discredit with facts or logic, deconstruct with humor, demystify with stories. Here, I'm going to look at counter speech do's and don'ts. We've defined what counter speech and counter narrative is. Now let's try to understand it a bit better by using the infographic on counter speech do's and don'ts from counterspeechtips.org, a tool for countering online hate and harassment without making things worse. For those who might have difficulty seeing the writing here, let's read the information on all the panels together. Every situation is different, and counter speech does not always work. Sometimes people are determined to hurt and are convinced they are right. At those times, it might be best to disengage or use other tactics. Use your best judgment. If you choose to engage, here are some tips for getting positive results. Next slide. So before we start, protect yourself. Take steps to protect yourselves from retaliation. Again, see the resources at iheartmob.org/tech. Think about how your online identity or profiles can be used against you. Remind yourself that behind every comment, no matter how hateful, is a human being. Treat them as you would like to be treated. It's worth keeping in mind that it could be a bot trolling you or a deep fake. So remember to exercise your best judgment about what to pay attention to and what to ignore. Think about what you'd like to accomplish. Do you want to change the person's mind or how they post or tweet? Stop them from attacking someone else or change other people's minds or behaviors? Next slide. So counter speech do's. Things you can try when you feel safe. Firstly, stay calm. If you're upset, wait a bit before responding. Research the issue to check your facts to make sure you are not responding to fake news or disinformation. Ask questions like, why do you think that? Or what do you mean? Refer to potential outcomes like, that could hurt someone. Label the comment, not the person. That word comes from a racist stereotype instead of saying you're racist. Show empathy and connecting with the target. Try humor if your intent is kind and you are not mocking the person. Humor can soften the exchange and attract others to show their support. Next slide. Counter speech don'ts. Do not label the individual, for example, calling them a bigot. Don't assume that the person has bad intentions. It could be lack of knowledge. Don't be hostile or insulting or aggressive. It can escalate the conflict. Don't talk down to the person. It can shut down communication. Don't nitpick or correct spelling or grammar. Use a civil tone and link to a source if you want to correct false information. Don't silence the person with threats, social exclusion, or other forms of punishment. If you'd like more information and more tips on countering harassment, both online and offline, please visit ihollowback.org. Next slide, please. Individual counter speech as upstander in intervention. Does anybody know what an upstander is as versus a bystander? An upstander is someone who does their best to support or protect their peers or an individual that they see that is being discriminated by. Whereas a bystander is someone who sees the bullying or the racist act, but does nothing to do anything to stop it. Sometimes people who laugh at something mean that the perpetrator is saying or don't say anything when they see a racist or bullying act. That is someone who is considered a bystander. So if you'd like to take part and be an upstander, here are some things that you can do. You can direct, distract, delegate, and delay. Direct means directly telling the perpetrator to stop or ask the individual who's being targeted if they're okay or require help. Often offer to walk or sit with the individual. Stop the perpetrator from committing violence against the individual Muslim woman or any individual that you may see being attacked. Distract. Examples of that would be interrupt the situation by distracting the perpetrator. Get him or her to look away or think about something different. Change their focus. Interrupt the situation by talking to the target. Talk to them in a way that takes power away from the perpetrator, from what the perpetrator is trying to do. For example, ask them about a book if they have a book or what movies they like, just to distract from the situation. Or delegate. Ask for support. For example, if you're on the TTC and you see an individual being attacked, try to engage maybe the conductor, somebody from the TTC that may be able to assist you. Or ask the bus driver or teacher security guard to intervene. Delay. If the first three are not possible for you in the situation and you don't feel safe, delay the interaction. Follow up after the incident and ask the individual if they're okay. Offer supportive resources or support after the fact. That makes you an upstander instead of just being a bystander. Next slide, please. It is so important for documentation. Documentation it catalogs the record of the incident. For example, perspective matters on individuals documenting. For example, George Floyd was brutally murdered. If it wasn't for the video of the upstander, it would have not been recorded in such a way that the individuals who perpetrated the act were able to come to justice. Next slide, please. If you're looking for more information and also step-by-step guide, there's a number of free manuals online, as well as some campaign development tools. One of them is looking at campaigntoolkit.org. It manages by the Institute of Strategic Dialogue and funded by the founding members of the Global Internet Forum on Countering Terrorism, including Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Twitter. Next slide. This slide is called, this is calling to action. I'm calling to action everyone here today. How will you continue to increase your understanding of online and offline hate? How will you continue to increase your understanding of counter speech? How will you individually engage counter speech online? And how will you collectively engage in counter speech, both online and offline? I'm asking everyone here today, if you see something, say something. If you'd like to find out more about an individual, about if you see a Muslim person wearing a hijab and you wanted to find out more of that individual's experience, go up, inquire. They are more than happy to share their experiences with you. Go visit a mosque if you'd like. Have a discussion about the religion and learn, try to educate yourself more about Islam and what the religion stands for. Thank you for your attendance today. I'm going to pass it over to Kubra, who will close this off. Kubra?
Hi, I hope you can hear me. So thank you, Natalia, for an amazing presentation. And we would like you to do our post-workshop survey. So what I'd like you to do is just copy that link that we have here, the Survey Monkey. It only takes a few minutes. We would really appreciate you doing this since we are funded by the government and we have to show them, like they want feedback on how we've done. So if you can just take a few minutes, so don't leave the meeting. You can just open it into a new browser, cut and paste it, and it should be, and there's also, Tracy has put it into the chat. So you can just cut and paste there. And when you're done, it will say, thank you for completing the survey. So I'll give everyone a few minutes. And so we'll be just wrapping this up. So just, and then if you have questions or comments, we're welcome to hear that as well.
Kubra?
Yes.
Hi, Tracy. How do people register to get their certificate for the program?
So everyone who has signed up, or actually you can give us the names, and then whoever signed up, for those will, work on the certificates for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Tracy, actually, you will take the participants from today's Zoom link. So sometimes people register, but they don't attend. So there's a way on Zoom that you can download the participants list, send it to myself and Kubra, and within 2 weeks, we will make sure that we issue the certificates to all those who have attended today.
I just, some people who aren't on my list, like they look like people from other libraries. I don't have their emails, so I'm going to put my email into the chat. And if that's the case, if you didn't register through the Pickering Library, then you can just send me an email with your name.
And on our end, we'll also try to see if we can register and download that list of participants today. I did see the numbers fluctuating between 50 and 53. So we will try it from our end. I will send you an email by tomorrow to let you know if we are able to do it.
Okay, thank you.
And the certificate's really nice. So for employers to take this kind of training, it's actually very beneficial. So if you're not on the list, please send us your email. Whoever has signed up. I know we had some people who joined afterwards. So I hope everyone's done our survey. Next slide, please. And so and we would like to thank our funding partner, the Government of Canada. You know, we live in such a wonderful place that we're given an opportunity to present this sort of workshop. So, and we have 17 chapters across Canada, and we've been holding this all over Canada. Our group, this is our 8th workshop, and we have a few more coming up. So this has been a huge honor for us to have you join us here today and to stay with us. We know it was long. Next slide, please. So if you have more questions about these workshops, for those who's on the call, and Iman, she's been doing our technical support. Jasmine has done some from the past, and Zainab. All these people have been working on presenting these workshops across Canada. So this is a lot of work. Like we said earlier, to do this workshop, I think there were 63 messages. So, so anyways, it's pretty amazing. Next slide, please. And we would like to thank you for joining us. And if you'd like to follow us, we would love it. We do have our social media channels and a lot of the workshops. This is actually the ending of the workshops. We were scheduled to March. We are doing some afterwards, but you can, see other workshops in Canada on this website. And some of the videos that we played are from there. All the material is there. So if you want to share that, please look at that. Next slide, please. And so these are our handles, social media handles. So we have an Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn. So be sure to follow us. Some of the videos that we talked about are on YouTube. They're really wonderful. And there's so many of them. And it's actually real Muslim women, real Canadian women sharing this experiences. It's really wonderful. I hope you can take an opportunity to see that. And just to close off, and we'll have questions after this. Next slide, please. So we would like to thank Pickering Library for hosting this. Tracy, who's on the call today, Abir, who's also here. Thank you for helping us present today. We would like to thank Mayor Ryan for coming and speaking to us. Having people in leadership roles is so important. We would like to thank Councilperson Shaheen Butt for his work, his advocacy work within Durham, within Pickering, and he's helped me put this workshop together too. I've used his help. I'd like to welcome Jacqueline San Antonio. I believe you're the new diversity person, so thank you very much for your work, and we're looking forward to see what you're going to be doing in Pickering. Thanks to Firdaus, Iman, and my co-presenter today was Natalia, and also thanks to Ruby. She's a local resident in Pickering, and it's nice to hear her perspective as well. If anyone has any questions, this is the time to ask. If
I
you
see
want.
Shaheen has his hands up.
Okay, sorry, missed it. Go ahead.
Kubra, thank you very much. I think your presentation, I actually give you marks up in terms to your committee. And I think the presentation, what you have done is open a lot of eyes. And not only that, and I think you've opened a discussion right here in terms to the problems that we're all experiencing. You know, I mean, it is a major problem. And I think that's what the mayor alluded to. I have a couple of questions. Racial profiling that you touched on your topic and gendered Islamophobia. My question is now, with your skills, how can we need to close that gap. How do we do that now? Maybe it needs a brainstorming, a roundtable discussion. We need to work on that and work on our next generation in terms of media. Obviously, I think in your presentation, you stated the media is a problem. It's a concern. And maybe perhaps ignorance, lack of knowledge. We need to close that gap. How do we do it? It's a tough question. I know you don't have answers right now, but that's something that I pose. We need to work together. The other thing I want to point out is I take pride to say that City of Pickering, the mayor and every council member supported Bill 21 in Pickering, and it got approved unanimously. So this is how we take hate so serious in Pickering. I also want to address in terms to anyone in any school going out to in Durham. I'm in contact with Durham School Board. I'm in contact with the police that I have frequent meetings with them weekly. If anyone, please share this with the community. Anyone going through hatred, bullying in any school or workplaces, please come out. Come out in the open. I think in your presentations, we need to come out in the open and speak about it so that this incidents or these incidents get reported. It is very, very important that it needs to be addressed. I don't think any school system or any kids going to a school that is being bullied is acceptable in today's day and age. So it has to be documented. In terms of the Black community, I work very closely to the Black communities in Pickering. Please, if any hatred, any police incidences, please contact me directly. I will take that action seriously. Okay, so, you know, I want to address that. I work from home, which is when I say home, I mean Pickering. You know, obviously this is Ontario problem. You know, race and discrimination is an Ontario problem. It's a Canada-wide problem. So when I say let's work from home, I mean the city of Pickering is home to us. So we have the right people. I think for your future presentations, we have Tracy and Abir in our library staff, one of the best staffs in our library we have. Any other presentations, please feel free to contact them. They'd be more than happy to accommodate you. The other thing I want to address on to is reach out to Jacqueline Antonio. She is our equity, diversity, and inclusions. She works very hard and takes hate, discrimination in workplaces, in schools, in our offices very seriously. Please get in touch with her. Is anything that we can do in our city of Pickering? We are out here, we can work with you, with anyone out there, and we want to eliminate hate. It's a disease, that's what I call. And I think with your community and work and team, Kubra, under your leadership, you're doing a fine job. So heads up, take care, good job, thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Butt. I would just like to say that one of our members, her son was out driving and got pulled over. So he looks visibly, you know, they're not Arab, but Muslim name, Muslim thing. Anyways, I think it's really important to educate our police force. So inshallah, we are having our own workshop with Durham Police in April. So I'm very, very excited about this workshop. We did one for Durham Police Youth in February, was well received. And now we're working towards presenting for our local police officers. So, you know, this is just a small thing that we can do, maybe to educate people about Muslims, about these topics, about these issues. So hopefully this is going to help make some changes, positive changes. Is there anyone else who would like to? I see that Husna, thank you for joining us from Vancouver, BC. I'm just curious, how did you hear about this workshop? This is interesting, so far away.
Hi. Yeah. So I actually I'm joining you all on behalf of Voices of Muslim Women, VMW here on the West Coast, and the workshop was actually brought to our attention through their social media on Instagram, and I'm just here representing them, and it's been such an informative experience. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for joining us from BC. It must be a time difference too. So that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, it's definitely
Yes.
it's daylight here, so it's actually 4:50 p.m. right now.
Thank you very much for representing and taking the time to join us today. I'd like to ask Aisha. Aisha is the cultural, I think you're the cultural policy person for Pickering. So thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to say something, I'd love to hear it.
Thanks, Kubra. Yes, I work as the cultural advisory in the as a member of the cultural advisory committee with Pickering, and I just want to echo what Councillor Scheinbert said, that you're doing amazing job, all of you here. And like, where do we start? We cannot start with Canada as a whole, but we can start in Pickering. And I would want to say, like, people know that, you know, in schools there are settlement workers or there are teachers who you can reach out to if you're bullied or, you know, if you're facing some kind of racism. But then we need to have a wing, or we need to have somebody in the community as well, which people know that they can reach out to, where people know that they are comfortable, they're in a safe space to say what happened to them. So having those kind of committees, or, you know, making it popular and letting people know, because there are a lot of committees available, there are a lot of people available, there is police board, there's, like, you know, counselors, there is members in the community, but then how approachable you are. I know many of them are approachable. I constantly talk to Councillor Scheinbert, and I talk to you, so I know we all are there. But how many of us in the community know about it? That becomes important. Saying it again and again, putting it out there again and again, that yes, we are here to hear you out, we are here to solve those issues, or at least find some solution for those problems, becomes important. And as you know, Muslim women, if we can at least support the community in Pickering, the Muslim community or the women in Pickering, I would say, like, we have made the start. So yeah, I just wanted to put that.
Thank you, Aisha, and thank you for the work you also do in the community. It's appreciated, and, you know, a woman of color, you know, these are wonderful, you know, things that you're doing. I see that Anjali's here. Thank you for being here from BC. I didn't know there's so many people here from BC. BC is so pretty too. So thank you for taking the time to support us. You know, and we are willing, if there's any other questions from anyone else. You know, we actually finished early, so.
So
yes.
Kubra, I
Yes.
just wanted to bring up to that, Fardous, we're looking at the next phase is developing material to go into the school. So Fardous, maybe you can share some of that vision of the material.
Thank you, Natalia. And I just want to thank our CCMW Durham team led by Kubra. Natalia, amazing job. As always, I didn't expect anything less from our team. Only thing is that we lost Iman, you know, during the beginning of the workshop. So I apologize for the little glitchy tech control that I did, but we saved the day.
You were amazing. You did good.
You. So I just want to kind of talk to what Councillor Scheinbert said, that absolutely. So the learning is amazing. We have very good content, I believe, that we have created. But what do we do with this? So when you're doing these workshops, a lot of people are getting engaged, they're getting motivated, and they really have the will to fight racism, to fight Islamophobia that they are maybe seeing in their schools, in their workplace. So just one suggestion that I could come up with is that you can even form like an anti-racism task force or a network, right? And start with Pickering and then extend it to the Durham region. You can have allies, you can have people from the police, from media as your advisory members, right? Like, but if there is any issues that arise in Pickering, people would know where to kind of come. They would go to the task force, make a complaint, or, you know, just share some learning. So this is just one idea. And to Natalia's point is that we have this content that we want to really now extend to schools. I totally believe that, as adults, we have to unlearn racism, which is really sad. And I think that if we get children who are in elementary schools, we teach them about anti-Asian racism, anti-Black racism, anti-Islamophobia, so they don't have to unlearn racism as adults as we had to. So we are kind of making our content really funky and digitally savvy. Kids love the digital media. So we are trying to do gamification, so to create games, to do something on TikTok. So stay tuned. I don't know the answers to it yet, but that may look like, so we are in D.A.R.E 2. So this would be D.A.R.E 3, where we are working a lot more with youth. And whatever we create and develop, we hope to share it with our schools and our school boards. And I will disseminate that information through COBRA and through our CCMW Durham team. So thank you so much for your attendance today, for such an engaged and captivating audience. I learn so much every time I have one of these workshops. So thank you.
Yeah, and I would just like to say, we did do a presentation for 2 high schools. So we did one in Ajax and one in Oshawa. We had over 1,000 people attend, and they really enjoyed it. So, and we also enjoyed, like we said, I think, with the youth starting, the attitudes that they hear at home, if we start them earlier, hopefully they will move forward and not, develop and that hatred or the problems. So I see a lot of nice comments here. Thank you to everyone for attending. If there's any more comments, we'll take them. Otherwise,
someone has
we'll
their
close.
hand up, but I don't know the
Okay,
name.
who is that? iPhone. Who's iPhone? Someone with iPhone. I'm not sure who that is. If you could
It is
just let me-
Mujahid. Mujahid.
Okay, Salakum.
Walaikum Assalam, yeah. I don't know why my thing comes as always as Mujahid. I have iPhone.
Hello there.
Yes.
That's me. It's Hasina. My name is Hasina.
Okay.
So I just wanted to learn more about, I don't know if it's related to this or not, how like somebody, they write on the ground, something bad for the religion. I forgot the word. What's that called?
Oh, graffiti? Like on a wall or something? Like
Yeah, on a wall or on a mosque ground.
Yeah.
Graphic? What is that called?
It's called graffiti. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to know more about that. Like
I think I think the city deals with that. I've seen them go back and paint things over. I think Mr. Shaheen Butt, yeah, Councillor Shaheen Butt, maybe you could answer that one.
Yes, I can. Graffiti is totally against our city. It is illegal. If you see anybody putting graffiti or violating any city property or any private property, please have it reported to the police. There is a huge fine if they get caught. If you look around in terms to graffiti in any sites, we make sure and emphasize in terms of city's perspective to have it removed within as soon as possible. Again, there's few gangs that apparently operate in Durham region, and it's because of them they want to show their power in. But as I said, it is absolutely, graffiti is against the law in Pickering that I know, and as well in Durham, I believe. I can only speak about Pickering. So if you see anywhere anything, please call the customer help desk in the city of Pickering, and they'll probably have it removed, and ask the owners to remove that graffiti out.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Was a good comment. Thank you, Councillor Butt. I think we'll end our session. It's been a busy 2 hours. We've given you a lot of information. You can find more information about what we've done today. It's Dare to Be Aware. It's a wonderful website. Thank you all for attending. We really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us, to listen to us, to support us. Natalia, do you want to say anything? I think she's muted.
I'm muted.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank everyone again for joining us and spending this time with us. And again, as a community, I live in Whitby, so it's Durham region as a whole. We start with one area and one region, and then see how we can spread those wings across Canada to eradicate hate. Again, Islamophobia is just another form of hate. So as a community, let's work together to move forward with this. And I've posted some links on the chat where as resources. So if you want to educate yourself some more on strategies and techniques that can be used to take it out into the community, please take a look. Education, I think education is taking us halfway there. Thank you again.
Yep, and thank you for the Pickering Library, Tracy Abir, for hosting us today. And thank you all for participating, supporting us, and let's all move forward. Like Natalia says, you know, let's start from our house and move forward. Let's make Canada, you know, racism free, and have a great night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.
Bye.